We've got a great show lined up for you here on Retiring Well. First, going to be diving into lower yields. We're seeing the interest rate environment change dramatically, so you want to be learning about what some options are there. Retirement mistakes that most 40-year-olds make. I'm in my early 40s, so I want to be paying attention to not making any of those mistakes. How to manage an inherited IRA. There's some key details here that you don't want to make a mistake and pay additional taxes. And then lastly, how to roll over your 401k. A lot of times upon retirement, you want to leave that 401k behind and shift to something that gives you maybe more options in retirement. So all this and a whole lot more coming up right here, right now on Retiring Well.
Retiring Well, brought to you by Centennial Wealth Advisory, financial advisors specializing in retirement planning and serving all of Northern Michigan. Retiring Well, helping you plan for a successful and comfortable retirement. Retiring Well. Plan to retire well.
Over the last couple of years, the actions of the Federal Reserve really dominated our news cycles, especially in the financial world. The big news going into 2024 was what's going to happen with interest rates. We were anticipating having these rate cuts, but we really didn't see anything here until September. Now, in their September meeting, the Fed did do a pretty large cut. They decreased interest rates by 50 basis points, or 0.5%. As we start to look forward, the market's starting to price in potentially 2 more cuts yet this year. And if we look all the way out to 2025, we're anticipating potentially a 2% decrease. So when we start to look at your overall cash allocations in the market, that does start to have an impact, and what does that actually mean to you is what we'll kind of go through today. So when you're starting to look at your cash money market CDs, you're starting to see those rates come down pretty aggressively. Now, when we talk about interest rates decreasing and market expectations, keep in mind that doesn't necessarily mean that actually is going to happen. It's just what we're projecting out. Now, with that said, if you're looking at your money markets or CD accounts, you've started to see those rates come down pretty quickly. They're starting to move in anticipation of what the Fed's going to be doing. Now, overall, the Fed made the decision to cut rates simply because they thought there was some concerns with the labor market, not necessarily because we're going in any sort of recessionary environment, but just trying to keep the economy moving in a positive direction. But when we look at overall the cash that we have, we've been in this world where we've started to actually generate some pretty good yield. Well, the concern is as we look forward, inflation has certainly come down, but we could be moving into a world where our inflation rate is actually now higher than the yield we're getting on our cash. What that means for you as an investor is now your real rate of return actually becomes negative. So if say inflation's 4% and your interest rate is 3%, you're actually losing purchasing power on your money. So it's a good time for us to start to revisit your overall asset allocation. So something we want to be thinking about is maybe it's time to take a risk questionnaire and see if maybe we're over allocated in cash, and if we're comfortable with it, starting to explore other opportunities in the market. That could be repositioning more assets into the equity markets or maybe the bond markets. When we look back to 1980, the 12 months after a rate cutting cycle starts, the S&P 500 has averaged 14.2%. Now, a lot of that growth that we've seen over the last couple of years is very concentrated in our large tech stuff, so more of our tech-based companies. So it's not necessarily that you want to go have a case of FOMO, fear of missing out, and go chase the market and invest in those areas, but it might be worth starting to diversify out in the different pieces in the equity market. Another idea behind that would be maybe starting to revisit some of our dividend stocks. That's an area that's really lagged over the last couple of years. Dividend stocks tend to come back in favor in rate decreasing environments because you go from this position where you had a really nice yield on your cash. Well, if that goes away, another alternative to that is maybe getting a 5% dividend on stocks. Again, not to say that that's something you need to have in your portfolio, but it's if you're looking at options for cash, it's worth starting to think about having maybe more of an equity weighting in the portfolio. Again, if it aligns with your risk tolerance, but inside of that, starting to maybe move some assets into those other areas like dividend paying stocks. Same thing with the bond market. Again, if we look back to 1980 in any sort of rate cutting market, we've seen bond portfolios outpace cash by an average of 10%. Inside the bond world, again, there's multiple different types of bonds. You want to be diversified and have a little bit higher credit quality, maybe a little bit longer duration inside that portfolio. Again, coming back to your overall plan, your risk tolerance, and those sorts of things. What you really want to be focusing on is starting to make tactical decisions and being more proactive as how you approach the investment portfolio. Don't just wait for the Federal Reserve to make these decisions for you. You want to start to be thinking about what can we be doing today to put our money in the best position to be working for us long term. So inside of that portfolio, again, it's taking a risk questionnaire, revisiting your overall asset allocation, maybe revisiting your overall retirement plan based on when you're going to need the assets. If we're sitting on large cash reserves, starting to deploy those assets to put in positions where we have more growth inside of those accounts. Inside in Centennial Wealth, we have a number of resources that we can use in helping you build that retirement plan, going through that risk questionnaire, building that portfolio that not only is going to be diversified from an investment standpoint, but also diversified from a tax standpoint. So we'd love to sit down with you for a complimentary meeting where we can help you start to actually look big picture at this portfolio, start to break it up more holistically, and manage the accounts on a more specific level that aligns with your values, your beliefs, and all the things you're trying to achieve long term.
Planning is the first step to succeeding. Plan to retire well. The success of your retirement depends on a solid financial plan. If you are retired or nearing retirement, we invite you to an informative live event to help you plan to retire well. There is no cost and no obligation, and dinner is on us. We are Centennial Wealth Advisory, financial professionals, specializing in retirement planning and serving all of Northern Michigan, with offices in Traverse City, Gaylord, Petoskey, and Cadillac. Our presentation will address important questions such as how will the new administration impact your retirement? What does the recent Fed interest rate cut mean for your portfolio? Are you worried about outliving your retirement savings? How can you maximize your Social Security benefits? What tax changes are coming in 2025? And much more. Call 888-608-5825 or register online and choose the date and location that works best for you. Wednesday, December 4th at Lakeside Charlie's in Cadillac. Thursday, December 5th at Stafford's Perry Hotel in Petoskey. Monday, December 9th at Boone's Long Lake Inn in Traverse City. Or Tuesday, December 10th at Treetops Hunter's Grill in Gaylord. The live event starts at 6:30 p.m. and is free to attend with a complimentary gourmet dinner to follow. But seating is limited and tends to fill quickly. Call 888-608-5825 or register online to reserve your seats today. Don't miss this important live event to help you plan to retire well.
Your grandchildren are precious to you. They are your life. This is your time to have that special relationship. Taking care of yourself is taking care of them. Centennial Wealth Advisory is offering a free, no-obligation retirement review to make sure you don't run out of money during your retirement. Centennial Wealth Advisory. Your best is yet to come.
Make the most of Social Security. Although Social Security isn't designed to cover all of your income needs, it's an important part of the retirement puzzle. Download our free booklet on the Social Security decisions at cen-wealth.com and learn how to optimize Social Security for your situation, why timing is so important when it comes to your benefits, ways to supplement your Social Security, and more. There is no cost and no obligation. Simply go to cen-wealth.com, scroll down, and click the download link to get your free booklet on the Social Security decisions.
Although this segment is titled Retirement Mistakes Most 40-Year-Olds Make, I think you'll find the information I'm going to cover beneficial whether you're 30 years old or 60 years old. It's really going to look at what are the issues when you're planning and preparing for retirement. We're going to look at retirement plan contributions at your work, 401ks or 403bs or other options you might have through your employer. We're going to look at emergency funds. Do you have money set aside that you should in case of an emergency? We'll talk about diversification among your assets, both your asset classes, but also the types of accounts you hold. And then we'll look at investments outside of your 401k. And then, of course, legacy planning and protecting your family in case something were to happen to you. So let's start off first looking at 401k. One of the top mistakes we see people make when planning for retirement is not maximizing your 401k contributions. So whether you're not contributing at all or you're not maximizing it, and maybe you can't, so we meet with some people and they're not financially, they're in a spot where they cannot maximize their 401k. I would recommend that you at least take advantage of your employer match. So many employers will match, 3, 4, 5, 6%. You want to, if you can, do everything possible to at least get that match. Every dollar matters. So even if you can't max out your 401k, as much as you can safely put in there, we would recommend that. Not having an emergency fund, or at least not having an adequate emergency fund. This is another area where we see people miss the boat on their plan. So importance of having an emergency fund is it keeps you from having to dip into your retirement savings to pay for any kind of emergency and or go into debt. So having to rack something up on your credit card. And when I mention emergency, I'm really thinking about your washer and dryer go out, your refrigerator goes out, major car repair. These are types of things that we look at as emergencies outside of the norm for your month-to-month situation. But yeah, so having that emergency fund, and that could be maybe 3 months, I would say, minimum of income for your situation. And some people like to have much more than that. Some people are okay with a little bit less than that. But it's very important that you have that adequate emergency fund for your situation. Another thing we think about is lack of diversification and or lack of appropriate diversification within your investment portfolio. So of course this involves proper asset allocation. And when I say that, a basic way to think about that is money split between, holding some in cash, some in stocks, and then some in bonds. So these are some of the basic asset classes. And when we look at this and we think about this with regards to your investment portfolio, you want to make sure that the way you have that divided up among the asset classes matches what's appropriate for your age, but also what's appropriate for your risk tolerance. And that's something that, we see a lack of. People don't understand that or don't have that set up well in their own portfolio. Another thing we see a lot of people as they prepare for a retirement, mistakes they make, is lack of investments outside of their 401k. So maybe, that first point was not maximizing your 401k. So maybe you have a 401k, maybe you're contributing to that 401k and you've done a good job of doing that. Well, another mistake we see is that clients don't have anything outside of that. So they don't have a Roth IRA. They don't have a brokerage account, and you might need stuff outside of your 401k to have the type of retirement you want. And when I say stuff, I mean, of course, accounts. It could be a Roth IRA, it could be a brokerage account, but it's important that you have these tools and that you use them to diversify outside of just the 401k through your employer. And then that's something we can help you with, and of course, that's something that will give you more tax advantages. So there's tax advantages now, obviously, with your 401k, but we also need to think about on the end of that, what that looks like. When you take the money out, you could be taxed, obviously, on that. So having those other accounts, that Roth IRA or brokerage account, gives you some more options, both now for tax purposes, but also in the future. And then finally, I would say, a mistake we see is people not protecting themselves and their family in the event of a tragedy. That could be death. Your death or your spouse's death. So term life insurance is something that we might want to talk about there, or other things. It could be property insurance in case something happens to your property you own, or disability insurance. There's a lot of different ways you can protect you and your family. So not having that protection is a mistake we see a lot of people make. We would be happy to walk through this with you here at Centennial Wealth Advisory, to sit down for a no cost and no obligation meeting so that we can help you plan to retire well.
Planning is the first step to succeeding. Plan to retire well. The success of your retirement depends on a solid financial plan. If you are retired or nearing retirement, we invite you to an informative live event to help you plan to retire well. Our presentation will address important questions, such as how will the new administration impact your retirement? What does the recent Fed interest rate cut mean for your portfolio? Are you worried about outliving your retirement savings? How can you maximize your Social Security benefits? What tax changes are coming in 2025? And much more. Call 888-608-5825 or register online and choose the date and location that works best for you. The live event starts at 6:30 p.m. and is free to attend with a complimentary gourmet dinner to follow. Call 888-608-5825 or register online to reserve your seats today. Living life isn't always easy. It puts up challenges and obstacles you'll have to overcome. There are responsibilities. You put in effort to provide and take care of your family, and to save and invest, to balance work and life. Planning is the first step to succeeding. Plan to retire well. As you are planning for retirement, where's your journey taking you? Do you know where you are going? How are you going to get there? And what's the best route to take? Do you have a personal retirement roadmap? At Centennial Wealth Advisory, we specialize in retirement planning, and we have designed a complimentary retirement roadmap video series that can be customized based on your personal circumstance and preferences. There is no cost and no obligation. Simply go to cen-wealth.com/roadmap and provide us with some basic information that will guide you to your on-demand, customized retirement roadmap video. Planning is the first step to succeeding. Plan to retire well.
By some estimates, $84 trillion of assets are going to change hands from an older generation to the younger generation over the next 2 decades. Of that, about $11.5 trillion are what's called IRA assets, or pre-tax money. And those assets, they're going to be changing hands as well over the next 20 years. So let's talk about inherited IRAs today, what they are, how they operate, and what are those pesky distribution rules that you need to be aware of. So first off, what's an inherited IRA? Well, an inherited IRA is basically an individual retirement account that a beneficiary receives when the original account owner passes away. And typically, these inherited IRAs are passed on to spouses, children, grandchildren, or other family members. But you can also pass them on to charities as well if you would like. Now, how do these kind of operate, if you will, these inherited IRAs? Well, the big thing for you to remember is that these are all pre-tax accounts, okay? So you have a partner in these accounts, and that is Uncle Sam. So when you take money out of these accounts, well, you got to pay tax on that, right? So don't forget that. But there's also a bunch of different rules and regulations, if you will, on when to take distributions and how you're supposed to take distributions, and it can get very confusing. But the IRS has boiled it down into basically 2 different categories of beneficiaries, and then you go from there, okay? So the first category is what's called a eligible designated beneficiary, okay? So to be an eligible designated beneficiary, you're either a surviving spouse, a disabled person, a chronically ill individual, someone that's not more than 10 years younger than the original account owner when they passed, or a minor child. So if you fall into one of those, then you're an eligible designated beneficiary. Now, the other category is what's called a non-eligible designated beneficiary. And essentially what this is a non-spouse that is more than 10 years younger than the original account owner when passing, and not a minor child, okay? So you can see here, we're starting to really get in the weeds, right? This is becoming a little bit confusing. Well, which category do I fall into? How do I know if I'm on the right path and so forth? So this is my mid-segment disclaimer, okay? Make sure before you do anything with inherited funds like this that you're meeting with a financial advisor, your accountant, somebody that understands all the ins and outs of inherited accounts, okay? Now, once you determine what type of beneficiary you are, you can then determine what your distribution rules are. Now, I don't want to get too far into the weeds because I don't have enough time for that today, but let's go over two common scenarios that we often see with inherited IRAs, okay? The first most common situation is when a spouse passes away, okay? The spouse leaves the IRA assets to the surviving spouse, okay? If this were to happen, well, the surviving spouse that inherits the IRA, it's pretty simple. They just have to assume the IRA as their own. And then their normal distribution rules apply for that IRA, okay? Now, there are some caveats to that, so again, meet with your financial professional to go over those, but that's the most simplest route that you can take there with a surviving spouse. Then the other common scenario that we see is for when someone that's younger, more than 10 years younger than the original account owner, not a minor child and not a spouse. So this would be like your parents are, you know, in retirement age, they pass away and they leave an adult child the assets. In this scenario, you would be subject to the 10-year distribution rule. So you would open up an inherited IRA, the money would come from your parents' IRA over to your inherited IRA, and then you would have to deplete the entire inherited IRA within a 10-year time period. Now, you could take it all out in 1 year, but as we discussed before, this is all taxable money, right? So if it's a large balance that you're inheriting and you take it all out in 1 year, that's a big tax hit that you could have. So most of the time, it makes a lot of sense to stretch it out over that 10-year time period. You just have to make sure you don't overdo it and not take it all out within that 10-year period. Otherwise, there's penalties. So if you have questions on inherited IRAs, what to do, how they operate and so forth, please give us a call on the number on the screen. We'd be happy to help.
57% of employees say that finances are the top cause of stress in their lives. This is one of many findings from a PwC survey. Human resources managers and business owners, we will partner with you to help your employees. At Centennial Wealth Advisory, we focus on education and the health of the whole person. We offer a complimentary financial wellness workshop with food provided for your team. We all want our employees to be productive at work, but most importantly, we want them to flourish in every area of their life.
If you like watching Retiring Well, make sure to go to youtube.com/retiringwell and click the subscribe button to never miss any of our TV shows and other informative videos.
You know, we love offering great information to you on the show and hope you always find it valuable and keep tuning in every week. We also have available at any time, you can go to our YouTube channel, subscribe to that, and we have uploaded all sorts of our old television shows and individual videos about very specific topics that you can find helpful. So as I dive into this topic, here is a great example of what would be available on a very shortened version of these topic-specific things. So this particular area here we're going to discuss for the next few minutes is rolling over your 401k. So you've worked along for some period of time and you've accumulated assets in an employer 401k. And what options do you have for that? I want to talk about a few different things to look at. The one thing that I want to pause for a second and read is rollovers can be a complex tool and there's a lot of things to look at. So before you do any rollover, make sure to consult a financial professional to determine your exact benefit to you, cost, fees, all that sort of stuff, because you want to have a great look at that. Don't go into this blind, because there's a lot of pieces that are very important to consider. So when you're looking at this, first let's consider our options that we have available. And let's assume we're leaving an employer to go to a different job. So I've worked somewhere for a while, now I'm going to a different job. I can leave my money in the current employer plan, the one I've already worked for. Most of the time they allow us to leave it there. There's in some instances that they kind of force you out, but usually you have the ability to leave it there. That's one option. You can roll it into your new company's 401k plan if they're offering one there. That is an option there. You can take a distribution. Could be careful with that one, as you can imagine, potential challenges with depending upon your age and tax situation, but literally you can get a check and have it in your bank account, if you will, or you can roll it to your own IRA. So looking at taking it out completely and roll it into your IRA account. Some of the other things though to consider when doing this is how you go about doing this. So again, depending upon what you're doing, but let's assume you're going to roll it to your own individual IRA. One, do it through a direct rollover. That you never take possession of the money that way, and it goes directly from the 401k plan right into your individual IRA. The other thing is called a 60-day rollover rule or provision. You may have heard this before, but again, if you happen to take possession of the money, either because they mailed you a check or you wanted to, there's a very stringent rule that you have to get this money back into a qualifying plan in 60 days. Otherwise, it becomes taxable. It is a hard and fast 60 days, and so keep that in mind if that rule comes into play for you. The other thing is every single company that we've ever helped folks with rollovers in tends to kind of have their own set of rules, their own set of guidelines when you're doing these rollovers. Make sure you are aware of what those are and you're following those. Some companies will have a fair amount of paperwork you have to complete and forms that you have to do. Others, you just simply log on to your online account and you can have it done in a few seconds, it feels like, and it's fairly simple. Others require phone calls, and some will even require notaries, signature guarantees, spousal sign-offs, and there's different various things. So again, be aware of what the rules are, requirements, and the provisions are so you can have an uninterrupted rollover when that time comes. So items to consider when you're looking at should I roll funds over, should I leave them where I'm at, and such. First, cost. What is it costing you to have that plan there? What are the fees they're charging? Will the fees change if you leave it? Will the fees change if you roll it somewhere else? What is all that happening? Investment options or preferences. What investment options are available in each circumstance you're considering? Where the plan is now, where you're going to, and what are you trying to accomplish? Access to professional management and planning. Different plans have different access to stuff. Different IRAs have different access to stuff. What are you seeking and hoping to accomplish during that time? Accessing the funds. Depending upon your age and when you may want to access funds, may help determine where the best place is suitable for you. There's different withdrawal ages depending on the plans that you're in, so be aware of that. Access to 401k loans. Some 401ks, employer plans, allow you to take loans against that money, where traditionally an IRA does not. So again, when you're looking at a rollover, there's lots of things to consider. So make sure if you're doing it by yourself, you're well aware of all the things. But when you're speaking with a professional, again, they'll help you examine all these sort of things so we can determine what is in the best case for you and what makes the most sense for your individual situation.